Section 12.1, Statistical Terminology and Data Collection. Upon completion of this section, you'll be able to use proper statistical notation and terminology, identify different methods of data collection, compare and contrast different sampling techniques. Statistics is the art and science of gathering, analyzing, and making inferences, that is, predictions from numerical information, data obtained in an experiment. I should point out that all data is not numerical. It can also be non-numerical. Variables. A variable is a collection of measurements or observations of the same aspect from the cases, the things that were being studied. And we have quantitative variables, which are numerical, and they have units associated with them, and those are things like age, height, weight. Categorical variables classify cases into groups, and we have several levels of categorical variables. We have nominal, which has no order, things like gender or political affiliation, and then we have ordinal categorical variables, which put things in an order, like on a Likert scale. And we also have identifier variables, which are used to identify the cases in the event that we would have to go back to gather more information. Examples are things like student ID, social security number. Business analysts hope to provide information helpful to American, grape growers, compiled these data about vineyards: size in acres, number of years in existence, state, varieties of grapes grown, average case price, gross sales, and percent profit. The variable size is categorical or quantitative. So size is measured with units, acres, so this is going to be quantitative. The variable state, states could actually be identifier, but in this case it's probably going to be categorical because we probably have more than one vineyard in a state. And the variable varieties of grapes grown is categorical or quantitative. Again, it puts things into groups, so this is going to be categorical. Statistics is divided into two main branches. Descriptive statistics are concerned with collection, organization, and analysis of data, and inferential statistics is concerned with making generalizations or predictions from the data that we collect. Statisticians, their interest lies in drawing conclusions about possible outcomes through observations of only a few particular events, which generally comes from a sample. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The population consists of all the items or people of interest, and the sample includes some of the items in the population. When a statistician draws a conclusion from a sample, there's always the possibility that conclusion is incorrect. Here's a couple scenarios, and I want you to identify whether this is describing a sample or a population. By a review of records of all incoming freshmen, administrators at Harvard University determined that 32% had taken at least one AP exam. This is describing a population, and the key phrase here, all incoming freshmen. Major League Baseball tests players to see whether they are using performance-enhancing drugs. Officials select a team at random, and a drug testing crew shows up unannounced to test all the players on that team. Now, you might think this is a population, but notice that they've selected one team at random, and so this is actually a sample. And in a minute, we'll talk about what kind of a sample it is. For population parameters, which are the things that we identify or describe about the population, we use Greek letters. And for measures calculated from the data, we use English letters, and these are called statistics. So population parameter, sample, statistic. And there's a little summary table. Is this a sample statistic or a population parameter? A company packaging snack food maintains quality control by randomly selecting 10 cases from each day's production and weighing the bags. They usually find about 2% of the bags are underweight. So this is a statistic because they've taken a random sample in order to calculate the underweight bags. The company summarized the wage data for all hourly employees and found that 68% made more than $22 per hour. This is a population parameter because we're talking about all of the hourly employees at that company. How data are collected. We can do a census, which we're doing this year in the United States in the year 2020, an enumeration of every member of the population. We do these every 10 years. An attempted census is used when every member of the population is contacted, but data is not collected from every member. In a survey, we collect data from a sample of the population. We can also do an observational study, which follows large groups of people over time, and these can be prospective, where the subjects are identified and the data is collected as the events unfold, or more commonly, retrospective, the subjects are identified and the data are collected on events that have already occurred by reviewing records. Epidemiology studies are observational studies that looked at the prevalence or risk factors associated with disease. Something you might think about right now in the United States, around the world, is the COVID-19 situation. And we have cohort studies and case control studies in that, epidemiology studies. We can also do an experiment where we randomly assign subjects or items to 2 or more groups. Different treatments are applied to each group. Researchers measure a response variable to determine if the treatments resulted in the differences that we observed among the groups. In each situation, describe whether this is an experiment or an observational study. Athletes who had suffered hamstring injuries were randomly assigned to one of 2 exercise programs. That would be an experiment. They were randomly assigned to one of the programs. Researchers who examined the health records of thousands of males found that men who died of myocardial infarction tended to be shorter than men who did not. This is an observational study. They examined the health records. Unbiased sampling is critical to ensure that the sample that is taken is similar to the population from which it was taken. The sample should replicate the population. We're going to study 5 types of sampling in this class. Random sampling occurs if a sample is drawn in such a way that each time an item is selected, each item has an equal chance of being drawn. When a sample is obtained by selecting a random starting point and then selecting every nth item in a population, we call that a systematic sample. A cluster sample is sometimes referred to as an area sample because it's frequently used on a geographic basis. This would be the example with the baseball, where they randomly selected a team and then went and drug tested all the members of the team. Essentially, it consists of a random selection of groups of units. Stratified sampling divides the population by characteristics called stratifying factors, such as gender, race, religion, or income, something that you're interested in, and you think that perhaps there might be a difference among the different groups, so you divide your population into the groups by those factors and then sample within each group. Convenience sampling uses data that are easily or readily obtained and can be extremely biased. And let's identify the sampling technique used to obtain a sample in each of the following situations. Every 20th can coming off an assembly line is checked for defects. This is a systematic sampling. Key phrase here, every 20th item is selected. A $50 bank card is given away at the annual bankers convention. Tickets are placed in a bin, tickets mixed up. Then the winning ticket is selected by a blindfolded person. This is a simple random sample. Every ticket has an equal chance of being selected. Children in a large city are classified based on the neighborhood school they attend. A random sample of 5 schools is selected. All the children from each selected school are included in the sample. Again, geographic sampling, this is cluster sampling. The first 50 people entering a zoo are asked if they support an increase in taxes to support a zoo expansion. This is convenience sampling. They're only sampling the people that are coming to the zoo. They're not asking people who don't come to the zoo who may not support that increase in taxes. All registered vehicles in the state of California are classified according to type: subcompact, compact, midsize, full-size, SUV, and truck. A random sample of vehicles from each category is selected. So this is stratified sampling. We divided the vehicles by strata based on the classifications, and then we take a random sample from each of the strata.